Hello, we finally got the camera working again. I mean, the camera always work. StreamYard is the problem, and none of the documents actually help. But so much for that. The ship is sinking. I hope you thinking. And it wasn't because you was drinking. Anyway, there are a lot of things in life that reminds me of ships. And ships come in all shapes and sizes. Some people are ferries. You meet them briefly. You exchange a conversation, an idea, maybe a laugh, maybe some information you needed exactly at the right time. You sail together for a few minutes, and then both of you get off at your respective stops. Sometimes you run into that same ferry again. Some ships are longer journeys. Your career can be a ship, a friendship can be a ship, a marriage or relationship can be a ship, and is literally ship and ship. Your relationship with a company, your neighborhood, your city, state, family system, lifestyle, social circle, even the version of yourself you've been carrying around for the last 7 years can become a ship. And the interesting thing about ships is that even when you feel like you're doing absolutely nothing with your life, you're still aboard something. Time is still moving. Your habits are still moving. Your environment is still influencing you. Your relationships are still shaping you. Your money is still going somewhere. Your body is still aging. Your mind is still being trained by whatever you repeatedly expose it to. So the question isn't always, am I moving? Sometimes the better question is, what am I currently riding and where is this thing taking me? Because sometimes the ship is sinking, hence the title. When the ship starts taking on water, a sinking ship does not always look dramatic. Sometimes there are no alarms. There isn't always someone screaming from the deck. Sometimes the ship is technically still moving. It isn't just going anywhere you want to go anymore. The ship may be sinking when you stop seeing growth, when the quality declines, when something that used to require reasonable effort now drains an unreasonable amount of energy. When you are constantly repairing problems that no one around you is interested in preventing. When you realize that everyone has become comfortable with dysfunction because dysfunction has been there long enough to receive its own bedroom. And sometimes the biggest sign that a ship is sinking is simply that you changed while the environment didn't. You stop wanting to spend money just to say you attended something. You stop showing up in places that cost you 3 hours, $50, emotional energy, transportation, and probably parking just to come home wondering why you went. You stop making excuses for self limiting behavior simply because everyone around you has normalized it. The environment didn't necessarily become worse. You became able to see it better, and that's different. Sometimes growth makes the water visible. Take something simple like the gym. Maybe you start working out consistently. You meet people there, and these are your gym friends. Beautiful. But eventually you realize your 1 hour workout keeps becoming a 3 hour workout because everyone wants to hold a town hall meeting between sets. And I like conversation, clearly. But eventually you realize I came here to work out. So now you can still speak, still laugh, still be friendly, but you keep moving because consistency requires boundaries. That's growth. You also start learning to observe people from a distance before automatically welcoming them deeply into your life. That's another form of growth because being friendly and granting access are not the same thing. I had to learn that one. The workplace ship. The same thing happens professionally. When you're younger or less experienced, you might think being a good coworker means everyone knowing everything about you. Then eventually you learn the balance between being social and being professional. And you start seeing the danger in too much workplace transparency because now you're listening. You notice something. The coworker speaking very freely to you about everyone who isn't in the room. They're probably doing the same thing with your business when you're not in the room. And no one has even asked them. They're just distributing everyone's information like a newsletter. You start noticing patterns. The same coworkers eating out every single day might be the same coworkers asking people for loans. The company might technically offer benefits, But people are so confused on working hard and playing harder that they never slow down long enough to investigate the benefits available to them. You might notice no one ever seems to move beyond entry level. And when someone appears capable of moving higher, the culture doesn't develop them. It isolates them, it discourages them, or it pushes them out. Now you're looking around realizing, wait, is this a workplace or is this a ship that has been circling the same patch of ocean for 15 years? My literal ships. And then there's maritime, which is convenient for this metaphor because we had actual ships. Working maritime taught me a lot. One of the biggest things I learned was the power of working in increments. Go away, work, come home, save, repeat. I saw how quickly savings could build when someone had a strategy, but I also saw the opposite. I saw people earn money that could have completely changed their financial lives and immediately convert those earnings into status symbols, cars, clothes, jewelry, whatever communication back home. I made it. And I'm not against buying nice things. I like nice things. The issue is when looking successful becomes more important than becoming secure. I saw longtime employees who had decades of memories of purchases, but very little retirement preparation. I saw people raising families from the water who missed enormous portions of their children's lives. Some hoped they would retire early enough to be present for their grandchildren. And what fascinated me was how many younger employees could hear those stories, watch those lives, and never stop to ask, if I follow this exact pattern, why would my ending be different? That was one of my earliest lessons in looking at another person's life without judging them and asking, is this someone's warning, someone's blueprint, or both? When my ship started sinking, my first maritime company eventually became a sinking ship for me. Wages were kept by position. There was very little room for advancement, and ship politics mattered heavily. If the master captain of your vessel didn't like you, climbing the ladder could become extremely difficult. What really got my attention was the information environment. There was misinformation circulating about Coast Guard certifications and what opportunities existed elsewhere. And whether every person spreading it understood what they were doing or not, the result was the same. People believed they had fewer options than they actually had. Some employees had been there for more than 10 years, proudly, comfortably, but earning less than what other companies were paying people entering similar positions. Then I left. And that changed my perspective permanently because I eventually worked at companies where I was earning more than captains I had previously worked for. Think about that. Same industry, same person, different ship. That's when you realize sometimes your earning problem isn't your ability, it isn't your work ethic, it isn't your intelligence. You were just standing on the wrong deck. Why sinking ships are hard to see from the inside. This is what fascinates me about sinking situations. The sinking may be easier to see from a helicopter than from the deck. Another ship may see your vessel leaning before you do, and life works the same way, especially if you grew up around uncertainty. Because when uncertainty has been normal, comfort can become more valuable than progress. You'll stay somewhere unhealthy because at least you know the schedule, you know the personalities, you know what causes the arguments, you know who lies, you know who never changes, you know which floorboard squeaks, floorboard. And humans can become remarkably attached to predictable dysfunction. I said floodboard because the Katrina trauma jumped out. Not because it's good, because it's similar. The family ship. Family can be one of the hardest ships to evaluate because family comes with history, names, roles, traditions, guilt, obligations, memories, and sometimes an assumption that everyone is required to keep repairing the ship simply because everyone shares blood. I had to look at parts of my own family system and recognize something uncomfortable. There were patterns of poor education, violence, instability, and recurring problems that had existed long before I was old enough to understand them. And as an adult, I started noticing that many of the emergencies were not actually new. They were reruns, different year, same plot, different argument, same behavior, different crisis, same decisions. And if you're the person who becomes more capable, more organized, more financially aware, more emotionally regulated, or simply more willing to solve problems, something interesting can happen. Your growth becomes incorporated into the dysfunction. Now, every time the ship takes on water, someone hands you the bucket. Not because you're responsible for the hole, not because you created the hole, but because everyone knows you'll try to keep the ship floating. Eventually, I had to ask myself, if people creating the problems have no incentive to change because I'm always expected to help repair the consequences, what exactly am I saving? Because sometimes the role you've been given in a family isn't family member, it's maintenance department, and there is a major difference. Family can matter deeply while still having destructive patterns. Love should have brought you home last night. Never mind. Love does not automatically make every environment healthy, and being related does not mean every version of the relationship has to survive forever. Sometimes the family ship doesn't need another person desperately sealing holes. It needs the people drilling the holes to stop drilling and to stop popping babies out them holes, the men and the women. Broken homes and broken people. Friendship can become a contract no one can read. Friendship have their own version of this. Some people feel obligated to remain friends with someone because we've known each other forever. Okay, but what has happened during forever? Because time is not automatically evidence of quality. Sometimes it's just evidence of duration. You can know someone since 16 and eventually realize the gossip habits they had at 16 are still there at 33. Except now the gossip includes marriages, children, jobs, custody, bills, people's private medical situations, everything. And somehow adulthood happened around them without adulthood happening inside of them. Maybe now they're a single parent. Maybe their own parent still infantilizes them so heavily that dependent independence is treated like betrayal. They're over 30, raising children, but everyone around them is still reinforcing an identity built around being incapable. And here's where things become difficult. Because you can love someone and still recognize this person's environment is invested in keeping them exactly where they are. If you start encouraging independence, growth, accountability, planning, or self sufficiency, you might accidentally become the villain in the system that survives through dependence. That's another sinking ship. Long term friendships in the debt of history. And then there are friendships where history starts functioning like debt. You've known each other 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. So now you feel like leaving would somehow invalidate everything. But imagine keeping a financial investment solely because I've already lost a lot of money. Sunk cost fallacy. That wouldn't make sense. Yet people do the emotional version constantly. You may know someone who has spent almost a decade complaining about their living situation. They say they can't move, change jobs, can't earn more, can't do this, can't do that. And every explanation sounds reasonable when heard individually. But when you zoom out, and over those same years, tens of thousands of dollars passed through unnecessary purchases, trips, food, clothes, entertainment, subscriptions, convenience, status, impulse spending. And maybe they are intentionally keeping income within a certain range to preserve certain assistances while simultaneously complaining about the financial ceiling that arrangement creates. I'm not speaking about people who genuinely require assistance because on this channel I literally put in almost every video, almost doesn't count though, resources that are free for people of all backgrounds, some that don't even require income needed to be submitted. So I am pro assistance. Don't get it twisted. Those programs exist for a reason. I'm talking about seeing someone openly refuse opportunities that can improve their situation because the discomfort of transition feels worse than the discomfort they've already memorized. Then complaining about the outcome as though no choices were involved. Eventually, you realize I cannot want someone's next chapter more than they do. And in my personal experience, I'm not a doctor, so it's all assumptions, but I am assuming that those people had experienced so many emotional situations that their emotional part of their brain was leading their lives. So things that were realistic didn't matter to them because it was about feeling and comfort rules in a lot of people's lives, especially emotionally led people. And it doesn't feel like you emotionally led because you can always look online to see people way more emotional than you are, which will make you feel less emotional, which in that sense of comparison you are, but in the grand scheme of things, you are not. And it's not bad to realize that because then that means you can change it. But if you're in denial about it, some people's lives are reruns. My super friendly dude era exposed me to a lot of lives, a lot. An unbelievable amount, actually. I have seen people maintain almost identical habits from their teens and early 20s deep into adulthood. Same environments, same spending, same relationship problems, same arguments, same social habits, blame, excuses, five stories, enemies. The only thing evolving is the age of the body funding the lifestyle. And when you're highly observant, this can become mentally exhausting because eventually you're watching someone criticize another person and thinking, you do realize that you're twinning a different outfit, right? They'll describe someone else as irresponsible. Meanwhile, their bills haven't organized since the Obama administration. They call someone dependent while depending heavily on other people. They'll criticize someone's relationship drama while starring in season 13 of their own. And sometimes your sanity cannot comfortably maintain deep proximity to extreme unawareness. That doesn't mean you hate the person. It doesn't mean you're better than them. It means certain environments becoming compatible with who you're becoming. Word two, I don't hate you because you're fat. You're fat because I hate you. The validation refinery. And then there's validation. The need for validation can be burning like the flames over the Chalmette refinery. Some people spend their entire lives building a customized existence around being witnessed. What will people think? Who saw that car? Who saw that trip? Who saw that outfit? Who knows I'm dating? Who knows where I work? Who knows what I bought? Meanwhile, the person they're performing for probably has their own electric bill due. We can spend enormous amounts of money, time, energy, and peace trying to impress outside sources that don't even know we exist. Then blame those outside sources for the condition of our own customized lives. At some point, you realize you have more creative control than you thought. Not unlimited control, but more than you thought. And that realization makes a lot of ships start looking suspicious. Not to mention, social media can sneak that feeling upon you because like during my social media time, I had to catch myself when it came to certain things that I've always done of wondering, why am I taking pictures of these things? I am not photogenic. I have never been photogenic. Yes, some pictures come out nice, but like, no. Anyway, the relationship. Sometimes the sinking happens intellectually. You start recognizing contradictions you previously ignored. Maybe you're around people who are extremely religious when evaluating everyone else's behavior, but suddenly become constitutional scholars of only God can judge me when the spotlight turns towards them. Draped up, dripped out, lust activated, sinned out. And again, this isn't about religion. This is about inconsistency and hypocrites. It's about realizing some belief systems are being used less as guidance and more as armor against accountability. The ship starts sinking when you develop the ability to see hypocrisy in people you once assumed had authority. And then comes the harder part, seeing the same thing in yourself. Because growth that only identifies everyone else's contradiction is just another ego costume. Real awareness eventually points the flashlight inward. Your emotions can tell you when the ship is leaking. One indicator I used throughout my life was happiness, not temporary pleasure, not whether every day was easy, but the overall condition of my peace. If I could fulfill any and all of my responsibilities, pardon me, sip, sip. If I could fulfill all my responsibilities as an employee, friend, family member, lover, tenant, customer, whatever role I was in, and still couldn't experience peace, happiness, or respect inside that environment, that became a personal indicator that something wasn't right for me. That's my MY indicator. I don't believe challenge automatically means unhealthy. I actually love challenges too much. Word the crossword puzzles. Challenge is usually life's introduction to something unknown that hasn't crossed your path yet. Challenge says learn. Dysfunction says keep absorbing damage and call it normal. Those are different. If I'm working customer service and customers are constantly abusive, aggressive, disrespectful, eventually I have to evaluate whether that environment is sustainable for me. Shout out to the medical industry. I tried to do customer service. Well, they call it healthcare advocate for y'all. But after y'all hit them people with the okey doke with them co-pays and them deductibles on people who had zero deductibles for years, the amount of cussing and fussing people were doing and not able to even listen to hear the resources I was recommending to them. And that's actually where I found out about 80% of the resources I recommend in my videos is due to the fact that however many billions or trillions of dollars insurance companies pacify customers that they took benefits from by sending them to nonprofits, which is groundbreaking. Not really. Because wearing a thick skin mask 8 hours a day, 5 days a week may come home with me. Especially if the people pleasing mask in my personal life already had me operating in a mental and emotional overdraft. I only get one nervous system. I'm not putting it on Klarna. Stagnation is also a sinking ship. Not every sinking ship is chaotic. Some are completely still. That's what makes stagnation dangerous. Nothing dramatic happens. No one gets fired. I actually was on a sinking ship before, but that is a whole different story. No one breaks up. No one moves. No one changes like a real life one. Every Tuesday looks like the previous Tuesday. Every year looks like the last year, except everything costs more and everyone needs hurt worse. And because nothing exploded, people assumed everything is fine. But if you've been saying the same thing for 9 years, wanting the same change, complaining about the same environments, repeating the same behaviors, and rejecting the same solutions, the ship may not be sinking through chaos. It may simply be sinking through time. Time math. Let me stop. I was doing good. You do not have to shop at the sinking store. One of the most empowering realizations I've had is understanding how often participation is optional. Maybe you've been visiting the same store for years, and every time you go, you complain. They're rude. They mess up your order. This place is chaotic. Customer service is terrible. Okay, how many businesses sell that same product? 5, 10, 50? Because sometimes we act like someone signed a constitutional amendment requiring us to shop at the most stressful place available, especially when money is involved. If I have 5 businesses available and one has constantly terrible service, I can leave. This sounds obvious, but carry that idea into the rest of life. Some environments survive entirely because people never seriously investigate alternatives. You may not have unlimited choices, but you have more choices than you've been using. The first thing I don't want you to do. Now, here's where I want to be careful. Once you start recognizing sinking ships, it can become easy to look backward and beat yourself up. How did I not see this? Why did I stay? Why did I trust them? Why did I spend all that money? Why did I waste all those years? Why did I shed all those tears? Why did I never get over my crippling fears? Instead, start with what you got right. Find the moments where you notice something. The first boundary you created, the first time you trusted your instincts, the first person you stopped chasing, the first bad financial decision you didn't repeat, the job you eventually left, the friendship you eventually changed, the habit you finally questioned, the relationship where you eventually said, "This isn't working for me anymore." Start there because evidence that you learned is evidence that you can learn again. Then work backwards. Once you remember what you got right, work backward. Ask yourself, what happened immediately before I figured it out? What was I noticing? What was I feeling? Was someone warning me? Was I defending something too aggressively? Was I making excuses? Did I have a strange feeling I kept explaining away? Was I afraid of starting over? Was I worried about looking disloyal? Was I confusing history with obligation? Was I staying because I genuinely wanted to stay or because leaving required me to admit something I wasn't ready to admit? And all of that may be difficult for a person who was raised in environments where being wrong feels physically painful to the point that you avoid it at all costs, and times that you've had to privately admit that you were wrong, it felt like somebody kicked you in your shin at full speed or something like that. That's something that I'll make a video about in the future, but you definitely have to work on that if you expect to grow, because that alone can cripple the whole operation. From my experience, I'm not a professional. And here's one exercise I really encourage. Think about a moment when you were completely wrong, not morally horrible, just wrong about a person, wrong about a job, wrong about a financial decision, wrong about a relationship, wrong about your own abilities. Then try to remember your mindset while you still believed you were right. That's powerful, because if you can remember how certainty felt while you were mistaken, you become less afraid of questioning your current reality. That is not insecurity, that is intellectual maintenance. Look for the early signals. Think about someone you eventually had to leave behind. Before the official ending, were there warnings? Did someone experience what that person try to tell you something? Did they warn you? Did they try to let you know? Did you notice inconsistencies? Did your body tense up around them? Did your happiness drop? Did every interaction require recovery? Did you keep telling yourself, maybe it'll get better? Maybe I'm overthinking? That's just how they are. We've known each other forever. It's family. I've already put so much into this. Sunk cost fallacy strikes again. Those statements aren't automatically wrong, but they're worth investigating, because sometimes history is quietly repeating itself while we're busy defending the sequel. Some ships can be repaired. Now, every difficult situation is not something you need to abandon. Some ships need maintenance, new leadership, communication, boundaries, better financial planning, a new strategy. Everyone involved to admit what we're doing isn't working. A relationship can survive change. A friendship can survive change. A family can survive change. A company. But then there's an enormous difference between a difficult ship where everyone is repairing the damage and a sinking ship where one person is bailing water while everyone else is drilling holes. That distinction matters. Sometimes you are the sinking ship. And because we're practicing self awareness, sometimes the ship is you. Everyone isn't against you. Sometimes your habits are the leak, your spending, your anger, your avoidance, your inability to listen, your need for validation has you buying things you can't afford for people you don't even like. Your lack of emotional regulation is turning every relationship into disaster recovery. You're complaining about the exact consequences your daily behavior is producing. And also, you are connecting to people or telling the world that you want to be cool with your coworkers. You want to build community. You want to connect with love. You want to do all of these things. But when you're meeting people, you're not even observing them at face value to learn different things about them just from presentation. You just pushing the narrative and forcing that title on people, and aware people are going to be uncomfortable because they are noticing the disconnect that this person is not adjusting to who I am. You're not noticing that I don't like dry text messages or repeat phone calls or pointlessly meeting up or pointlessly having phone conversations that don't lead anywhere, or constantly hearing about negative stuff about random musty ass celebrities that I don't even pay attention to, or the fact that there's literal or no accountability or reflection about your current state of your life, your health. You're not doing it, and you have very destructive habits that are literally scientifically and society proves that they destroy lives, and you expect people to be comfortable with you doing it because you have a justified reason of your usage of it. Ta-da. That's actually great news, because if the problem is partially you, you have access to you. That was off script too. You can't control strangers. You can't control the economy. You can't control someone else's personality, but you can control your access to it, and there's to you. You can't control every opportunity, but you can work on the part of the ship where your hands actually reach. The goal is not to become paranoid. I don't want anyone walking around examining every person like, are you sinking? Is this restaurant sinking? Is my cousin sinking? That's not awareness. That's anxiety with binoculars. The goal is to become more deliberate, observe, participate, reevaluate, learn, and understand that staying is a decision too. People talk about leaving as though leaving is the only major choice. Staying for another year is also a choice. Spending another $1,000 is a choice. Giving that person another 12 months of emotional access is a choice. Remaining inside that career path is a choice. Allowing yourself to keep functioning as everyone emergency department is a choice. And sometimes making conscious decisions requires admitting that yesterday's choice no longer fits today's information. You are allowed to change ships. You're allowed to outgrow something. You are allowed to learn something new and change direction. You are allowed to stop being compatible with an environment. You are allowed to realize a friendship worked beautifully for the version of you that existed 10 years ago. You are allowed to love family from a different distance. You are allowed to leave a company after they trained you. You are allowed to stop being a customer. You are allowed to move. Allowed to stop performing loyalty to situations that stopped being loyal to your well being years ago. And sometimes you don't even have to declare anything, you just quietly make different decisions. And if love matters so much to you, just love them in spirit. Spirit has no distance. If I love someone on the other side of the world in spirit, that does not require them having access to me. They don't need to be stalking any social media digital footprints I left, which mine are gone except YouTube. YouTube is the only one currently, and maybe a few phone apps. But other than that, like, nah. Be proud of the ships you already left. And this is the part I really want people to understand. Do not build your entire self evaluation around everything you missed. That is misery. You are going to miss things. You are going to misread people. You're going to stay somewhere too long. You're going to waste money. You're going to ignore information. You're going to make a decision that future you looks back and says, baby, what was happening? That's life. But instead of only looking at what we're wrong, look at what you eventually recognize. Look at what you corrected, what no longer works on you. At the manipulation you recognize now. At the financial mistakes you don't make anymore. At the arguments you no longer participate in. At the person you no longer chase. At the environment you know how to leave. At the boundaries you didn't have 5 years ago. That's your evidence. Then trace backwards. Study yourself. Figure out where the warning signs were. Not so you can punish your previous self, so you can better protect your future one. Final thought. Oh, I did good. Life has a lot of ships. Some are ferries, some are cargo ships, some are cruise ships, some are fishing boats, some are military grade disasters with someone's uncle welding the hole shut while everyone screams about loyalty. And some ships carry you exactly where you need to go. Be grateful for those, but don't confuse gratitude for a journey with an obligation to remain abroad forever. A ship can have carried you safely for 10 years and still no longer be going where you're going. A friendship can have once been beautiful and still become compatible with your growth. A career can have changed your life and still eventually become your ceiling. A family can become your family and still require boundaries if the system demands that your growth be sacrificed to maintain everyone else's dysfunction. And sometimes the ship isn't sinking at all. Sometimes you're simply ready for another ocean. So don't spend all your energy mourning what you don't see or didn't see. Start with everything you did, the pattern you broke, the places you left, the lessons you learned, the boundary you created, the habit you changed, the moment you finally looked around and said, I don't think I'm supposed to be here anymore. Then work backward. Find the signs you miss. Learn what they felt like. Learn what you told yourself. Learn what you kept abroad. The goal is to become someone who trusts themselves enough to notice the water. Checking where it's coming from, decide whether the ship can be repaired, and if it can't, know where the lifeboats are. And please put me in healthy situations, because putting me in bad situations is a hazard to the multiverse. I'll see you next time. And this is clearly a safe place for me in my account, in my own comment section, so I'm a little bit more comfortable now. And I mean, when I see the notifications, I definitely respond to them. Keyword when I see them. But I appreciate it, and also just know if this your first video, this is like an ongoing story. All of the videos connect to each other, so there's like a little sprinkle of redundance that connects the videos, but each video tells its own story, sort of, kind of. And comments are welcome. you, and I hope you have a better day, like we used to say on Roadside Assistance.